A billionaire, visiting her son's final resting place, stumbled upon a scene. A homeless mother weeping, clutching her child close. The shock that followed came from discovering their identities. Hey everyone, welcome to our story. Before we dive in, please hit that like button and subscribe. Also, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Maybe New York, London, Canada, or even Jamaica. We're curious. Veronica Hayes was a woman of 60 years, though the weight of sorrow made her appear a decade older. She was one of the wealthiest women in the entire state. Her empire included shopping malls, apartment complexes, and swanky restaurants scattered throughout the city. They called her the Steel Queen, because once her mind was made up, nothing and nobody could sway her. Yet, all her riches couldn't bring back what she'd lost 3 years prior. Her son, her only child, Johnson. Every month, on the 15th, like clockwork, Veronica would drive her sleek, black car to Greenwood Cemetery. She would walk past hundreds of graves, until she stood before the tall marble stone that marked Johnson Hayes's final resting place. Beloved son, 1991 to 2022. Today was no exception. It was a bleak Thursday afternoon in November. Overcast skies hung heavy, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves, sending them swirling to the ground. Veronica, draped in a long black coat, carried a bouquet of red roses, Johnson's favorite. She walked slowly through the cemetery gates, the click of her high heels echoing on the stone path. All was still, save for the distant chirping of birds. But as Veronica rounded the corner, nearing Johnson's grave, she stopped dead in her tracks. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Her jaw dropped. There, kneeling right in front of Johnson's marble stone, was a young woman dressed in tattered clothing. The woman's arms encircled a small girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old, who sobbed into her shoulder. Both were weeping as if their hearts had shattered into a million pieces. Veronica's grip tightened on the roses. A strange mix of emotions flooded her. Anger, confusion, and something else she couldn't quite define. Who are these people? What are they doing at my son's grave? She marched forward, her footsteps echoing. Excuse me. Veronica's voice cut through the still air of the cemetery like a sharp knife. This is a private grave. You need to leave now. The young woman's head shot up. Her face was blotchy and swollen from crying. Her dark eyes were filled with tears, but beneath the surface lay a strength, a resilience that wouldn't break easily. Oh, I'm so sorry, the woman stammered, her voice trembling. She quickly rose to her feet, pulling the little girl close. I didn't realize you were coming today. That's beside the point, Veronica snapped, stepping closer. I asked you a question. Who are you? And why are you crying at my son's grave? The woman wiped her face with her sleeve. My name is Clara Mitchell. This is my daughter, Mary. Veronica looked down at the child. The little girl had big, dark eyes, short dark hair, and a complexion to match. She was thin, too thin, and her clothes appeared old and worn. The child met Veronica's gaze with an expression that made Veronica's heart skip a beat. Those eyes, that face. Something about her looked familiar. That still doesn't explain why you're here, Veronica snapped, brushing the thought aside. This grave belongs to my family. My son, Johnson Hayes. You have no business being here. Clara took a deep breath. When she spoke again, her voice was softer but steadier. I know who he was. I come here every month because... She paused, glancing down at Mary. Because Johnson was important to us. Very important. Veronica felt a chill run down her spine. Important how? She demanded. The wind picked up, causing the tree branches to creak overhead. Clara's hand tightened around Mary's shoulder. Because, Clara said, lifting her chin and looking directly into Veronica's eyes. Johnson and I were together. We loved each other. And because Mary is his daughter. The roses slipped from Veronica's grasp. They scattered across the damp grass, red petals breaking apart and mingling with the earth. Veronica struggled to breathe, her mind reeling. The world seemed to tilt. What did you just say? She whispered. Clara didn't flinch. Mary is Johnson's child. Your granddaughter. That's impossible, Veronica hissed. My son would have told me. He told me everything. No, Clara said softly. He didn't. He wanted to, but he was afraid. He said you wouldn't approve. He said you would try to tear us apart. Veronica's face flushed with anger. How dare you? You're lying. You're some kind of con artist who heard about my money. I'm not lying, Clara retorted. Her voice calm despite the tears streaming down her cheeks. I worked at Tony's Diner on 5th Street. Johnson came in every Tuesday for coffee. We started talking. Then we fell in love. I got pregnant and he was happy about it. He wanted to be a father. Liar, Veronica shouted. If any of this were true, he would have introduced you to me. He would have brought you to our home. He tried, Clara said, her voice breaking. 3 times he almost told you, but each time he got scared. He said you had plans for him. Plans to marry him off to some rich woman from a good family. He said you would never accept a waitress. Never accept me. Veronica stared at the woman, her mind racing. Johnson had been acting strangely in the months before his death. Sneaking out at odd hours, smiling at his phone, refusing to meet the daughters of her business associates. A secret girlfriend? A secret child? Prove it. Veronica spat through clenched teeth. Prove that this child is related to my son, or I'll have you arrested for harassment. Clara reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, faded photograph. She offered it with a trembling hand. Veronica snatched it. The photo showed Johnson smiling that big, bright smile she hadn't seen in years, with his arm around a younger, healthier-looking Clara. They were at some kind of park. Clara was holding a tiny baby wrapped in a yellow blanket. Johnson was kissing the baby's forehead. On the back, in Johnson's handwriting, were the words, "My 2 girls, my whole world, J." Veronica's legs felt weak. She stumbled backward. No, she whispered. No, no, no. She looked at the little girl again. Really looked this time. Mary had Johnson's nose, Johnson's chin, Johnson's gentle smile, and those eyes, those brown eyes with tiny gold flecks. Johnson's eyes. Veronica's heart cracked open. 3 years. 3 years she had been alone, thinking her son's legacy had died with him. But here was his child, his daughter, her granddaughter, standing before her in tattered sneakers and a jacket full of holes. Living with a homeless waitress. A dark, cold feeling twisted in Veronica's chest. Where do you live? Veronica asked abruptly. Clara hesitated. We move around. Shelters mostly. Sometimes friends let us stay for a few days. Shelters, Veronica repeated, her voice rising. You're raising my son's child in shelters? I'm doing the best I can, Clara said defensively. I work 3 jobs, but rent is expensive and child care is. This is unacceptable, Veronica interrupted. Her mind was already racing, calculating, planning. That child is a haze. She has a right to stay with her mother, Clara said firmly, pulling Mary closer. I know we don't have much, but Mary is loved. She's safe. Safe? She's living on the street. Veronica shouted. Eating from soup kitchens, wearing clothes that don't fit. Is that what you call safe? Clara's face paled, but her jaw remained set. We're managing. You're failing, Veronica said coldly, and I will not allow my granddaughter to suffer because of your poverty. She's my daughter, Clara said, her voice shaking with emotion. Johnson chose me. He loved me, and if he were here, he would want us to stay together. Veronica stepped forward until she was inches from Clara's face. But he's not here, she said quietly, dangerously. I am, and I have the power to give that child everything you never could. Education, stability, a real home, a real future. She already has a future, Clara whispered. With me. Veronica looked at the homeless woman, at her worn-out clothes and desperate eyes, and a cruel thought bloomed in her heart. My son's blood will not be wasted on garbage like you. We'll see about that, Veronica said softly. She turned and walked away, leaving the roses scattered on the ground. But as she reached her car, she pulled out her phone and dialed a number. "Marcus," she said when someone answered. "I need you to investigate someone. Her name is Clara Mitchell. I want to know everything about her. Everything. And I want it by tomorrow morning." She hung up and glanced back at the cemetery. Through the iron gates, she could see Clara and Mary walking away hand in hand, disappearing into the gray afternoon. Veronica's eyes narrowed. That child belongs to me now, and I always get what I want. The next morning, Veronica sat in her enormous office on the top floor of Hayes Tower, a glass skyscraper in the heart of the city that she owned. Her desk, made of dark wood, was bigger than most people's bedrooms. Behind her, floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city below, making everything look tiny and insignificant. Veronica hadn't slept all night. She couldn't stop thinking about that little girl, Mary, her granddaughter Johnson's daughter. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that photograph. Johnson smiling, kissing the baby's head, looking happier than she'd ever seen him. Why hadn't he told her? Why had he kept such a huge secret? Because you would have destroyed it. A small voice whispered in her mind. Asterisk, because you would have done exactly what you're about to do now. Asterisk. Veronica pushed the thought away. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called. The door opened, and Marcus Chin walked in. He was Veronica's private investigator, a wiry man in his 40s with piercing eyes and a briefcase full of secrets. For 15 years, he had worked for Veronica, unearthing information on business rivals, cheating spouses, and anyone else she needed to know about. "Good morning, Mrs. Hayes," Marcus said, taking a seat across from her. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "I have the information you requested. Tell me everything," Veronica said, leaning forward. Marcus opened the folder. Clara Mitchell, age 32, born and raised here in the city. She graduated high school but never went to college, couldn't afford it. For the past 8 years, she's worked as a waitress at various diners and restaurants. "Go on," Veronica urged. "She met your son approximately 7 years ago at Tony's Diner, where she was working the morning shift. According to her former coworkers, Johnson came in regularly, and they started dating about 6 months later." Veronica's jaw tightened. 7 years. He kept this from me for 7 years. "The child, Mary Mitchell, is 6 years old," Marcus continued. "Born on March 15th. Johnson was listed as the father on the birth certificate, though it appears he never formally acknowledged her publicly. Because he was hiding her," Veronica muttered bitterly. Marcus cleared his throat. After Johnson's death 3 years ago, Clara's situation deteriorated rapidly. She was evicted from her apartment 8 months later when she couldn't pay rent. Since then, she and the child have been moving between homeless shelters, staying with friends occasionally, and sleeping in her car when there's no other option. Veronica felt a strange pang in her stomach. She suppressed it. "What about her criminal record?" Veronica asked. Marcus flipped a page. "Clean. No arrests, no charges, not even a parking ticket. She's never been in trouble with the law." "What about drugs, alcohol?" "No evidence of substance abuse. Her former employers describe her as hardworking and reliable, though she's been let go from several jobs recently due to missing shifts, likely because of child care issues." Veronica drummed her fingers on the desk, thinking. "What about the child, Mary? Is she in school?" "She was enrolled in public school last year but has missed significant time due to their housing instability. According to school records, she's a bright student but struggles with attendance." Veronica stood up and walked to the window, gazing out at the city below. Somewhere down there, her granddaughter was living in a shelter, missing school, wearing hand-me-down clothes. Johnson's daughter, my blood, living like that. "I want DNA testing," Veronica said abruptly. "I need legal proof that the child is Johnson's." Marcus nodded. "I anticipated that. I've already arranged for a testing facility. However, you'll need Clara's cooperation to test the child." "Then I'll get it," Veronica said coldly. "One way or another." 3 days later, Veronica returned to the cemetery. She knew Clara would be there. Marcus had been following her and had reported that Clara visited Johnson's grave every Thursday afternoon when Mary was at a free after-school program at the community center. Sure enough, when Veronica arrived, she saw Clara kneeling by the grave, arranging a small bouquet of wildflowers she must have picked from somewhere. Veronica approached quietly, her shadow falling over Clara. Clara looked up, startled. When she saw who it was, fear flashed across her face. "Mrs. Hayes," Clara said, standing quickly. I was just leaving." "Don't," Veronica said. Her voice was softer than before, more controlled. "I want to talk to you." Clara wrapped her arms around herself, looking nervous. "About what?" "About Mary," Veronica said. "About my granddaughter." Clara's eyes narrowed slightly. "What about her?" Veronica took a breath. She had rehearsed this conversation in her head countless times. "I've been thinking about what you said," Veronica began, "about Johnson, about your relationship with him. And I believe you might be telling the truth." Clara blinked in surprise. "You do? I had you investigated," Veronica admitted. "I found evidence that supports your story. The timeline matches. And the child. She does look like him." Clara's shoulders relaxed slightly. "So, you believe me now?" "I'm willing to consider it," Veronica said carefully. "But I need proof. Legal proof. I need a DNA test to confirm that Mary is Johnson's biological daughter." Clara's face hardened. "What? So you can take her away from me?" "No," Veronica lied smoothly. "So I can help you. Both of you." Clara stared at her suspiciously. "Help us how?" Veronica gestured around them. "Look at your situation, Clara. You're homeless. You're working multiple jobs just to feed your daughter. She's missing school. She doesn't have stability or security. Don't you want better for her?" "Of course I do," Clara said, her voice rising. "I want everything for her. But I'm doing the best I can with what I have." "I know," Veronica said, her voice gentle but insincere. "And I respect that. You're a fighter. But Mary is also a Hayes. She has a right to her father's legacy, to her inheritance, to the life Johnson would have wanted for her." Clara shook her head. "Johnson wanted her to have love. That's what he cared about, not money." "She can have both," Veronica said. "Let me help you. Let me set up a trust fund for Mary's education. Let me find you proper housing. Let me give you the support you need to take care of her properly." Clara looked uncertain now, torn between hope and suspicion. "All I'm asking," Veronica continued, "is for a simple DNA test. Once we have legal confirmation that Mary is Johnson's daughter, I can begin the process of providing for her future. Isn't that what you want? For her to have opportunities?" Clara bit her lip, thinking hard. "Just a test?" she asked quietly. "Just a test," Veronica confirmed. "Nothing more. You have my word." It was a lie. Of course, Veronica had no intention of just helping. She had plans, big plans, that Clara couldn't even imagine. But Clara, exhausted and desperate and wanting so badly to believe that someone would finally help them, made a mistake. She said yes. 1 week later, the DNA results arrived. Veronica sat in her office, holding the official document from the testing laboratory. Her hands trembled slightly as she read the conclusion. Probability of paternity, 99. Johnson Hayes is the biological father of Mary Mitchell. Veronica set the paper down and closed her eyes. It was real. The homeless woman's child was her granddaughter, Johnson's daughter. The last piece of her son that still existed in this world. For a moment, just a fleeting moment, Veronica felt something tender in her chest. Something that might have been love, or joy, or hope. But then she thought about Clara. That woman, that poor, uneducated waitress who had stolen Johnson's heart, who had diverted him away from his genuine life, his true future, his proper family, who was now raising a Hayes child in poverty. The tender feeling hardened into something cold and resolute. My granddaughter will not be raised in shelters. She will not wear hand-me-down clothes. She will not eat from food banks. She will be raised properly, with discipline, with education, with everything money can buy. But not by her. Veronica reached for her phone and dialed her lawyer. "Richard," she said when he answered, "I need you to prepare custody papers. I'm going to take custody of my granddaughter." There was a pause on the other end. "On what grounds, Mrs. Hayes?" Veronica smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. "On the grounds that the mother is unfit, homeless, unstable, and unable to provide basic necessities." "That might be difficult to prove in court," Richard warned, "unless there's evidence of neglect or abuse." "Then find evidence," Veronica said sharply. "Or create it. I don't care how you do it. That child belongs with me, and I will not let some beggar woman stand in my way." Another pause. "Mrs. Hayes, I have to advise you that what you're suggesting could be—" "I'm not asking for advice, Richard," Veronica interrupted. "I'm giving you instructions. File the custody papers. We're going to war." She hung up the phone. Outside her window, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Veronica glanced at the DNA report one last time. Mary's name was printed in black ink. Johnson's daughter, my blood, my family, my legacy. And Veronica Hayes always got what she wanted, no matter the cost, no matter who got hurt. 2 weeks passed. Clara began to sense that things were changing, taking a turn for the strange. First, there was the social worker who showed up at the shelter where she and Mary were staying. The woman fired off questions, relentlessly probing, delving into details. Where Mary slept, what she ate, how often she missed school, whether Clara ever left her unattended. Clara responded candidly, openly, secure in the fact that she had nothing to hide. She adored her daughter. She cared for her with every fiber of her being, doing the best she possibly could. But the social worker transcribed every word into a small notebook, her expression unreadable, blank, and cold throughout the entire exchange. Then, there was the manager at the diner where Clara worked. He summoned her into his office and informed her that complaints had been lodged against her. One customer alleged she was rude. Another reported that money had vanished from the register during her shifts. Clara was dumbfounded. She had never intentionally been rude to anyone, and she would never steal, not even a single penny. But the manager was unyielding, disbelieving. He told her he had no choice but to let her go. Clara left the diner in tears, her final paycheck clutched in her hand. The money wouldn't last them more than a few days. Something was off, seriously wrong. She felt an eerie sensation, like someone was watching her, tracking her, deliberately dismantling her life piece by piece. And then, on one rainy Tuesday afternoon, she found out who. Clara was walking Mary home from school, or rather, back to the shelter, when a police cruiser pulled up beside them. 2 officers emerged from the vehicle. Mary instinctively tightened her grip on her mother's hand, her eyes wide with fear. "Clara Mitchell?" one of the officers inquired. Clara's heart pounded in her chest. "Yes, what's wrong?" "You need to come with us, ma'am," the officer stated. "You're under arrest." The world seemed to spin out of control, blurring into a disorienting haze. "What?" Clara gasped. "Arrested for what? I didn't do anything." "You're being charged with theft," the second officer announced, producing a pair of handcuffs. $500 was stolen from the diner where you worked. The manager filed a police report. "No!" Clara cried. "That's not true. I never stole anything. This is a mistake." But the officers were unmoved, unhearing. They turned her around and secured the cold metal handcuffs around her wrists. Mary erupted in screams. "Don't take my mommy, please. She didn't do anything wrong." Clara looked down at her daughter, tears cascading down her face. "Mary, baby, listen to me. This is a mistake. Okay? Mommy will fix this. I promise I'll be back soon." "Ma'am, we need to contact child services," one of the officers stated. "The child can't be left alone." "No!" Clara resisted against the restraints, her voice desperate. "Please, she has nowhere to go. I'm all she has." "A social worker is already on the way," the officer replied, his tone implacable. Mary was now sobbing uncontrollably, clinging to her mother's leg. "Mommy, don't leave me, please." Clara's heart shattered into a million fragments. "I love you, baby. Remember that. I love you so much. I'll come back for you. Promise." The officers steered Clara toward the police car. Mary attempted to follow, but one of the officers gently restrained her. As they drove away, Clara craned her neck, looking through the back window, and saw her daughter standing alone on the sidewalk in the rain, crying, her small hand outstretched, reaching for her. It was the last time Clara would see Mary for 20 years. The trial proceeded swiftly, too swiftly. Clara barely grasped what was unfolding. She was assigned a public defender, a young, weary lawyer who seemed overwhelmed and preoccupied. He informed her that the evidence against her was substantial, overwhelming. The diner manager testified that Clara had been working alone when the money disappeared. Security footage purportedly showed her near the register, and somehow, inexplicably, the stolen $500 was discovered in Clara's bag during a search of her belongings at the shelter. Clara maintained her innocence, insisting that someone must have planted the money, that the entire ordeal was a setup, a calculated scheme. But who would believe a homeless woman over a respected business owner? The jury certainly didn't. They found her guilty of theft. The judge, gazing down at Clara with an air of disappointment, declared that while the crime itself wasn't particularly severe, Clara's circumstances, her homelessness, her instability, her inability to provide for her child, revealed a pattern of poor judgment. He sentenced her to 20 years in prison. Clara screamed, pleaded, begged, wept, professing that she had a daughter who desperately needed her. But the judge's decision was final, immutable. As the guards escorted her away, Clara noticed someone seated in the back of the courtroom. Veronica Hayes. The old woman sat perfectly still, clad in an expensive black suit, her posture erect, her expression composed. Her face was devoid of emotion, but her eyes were glacial, satisfied, triumphant. And in that instant Clara understood everything. This wasn't about theft. This was about Mary. Veronica had orchestrated the entire charade, framing her, destroying her life, stealing her daughter. "You monster!" Clara screamed, struggling against the guards. "You did this. You took everything from me." Veronica rose to her feet with unsettling calm and headed for the exit. But just as she reached the doorway, she paused, turning back to fix Clara with one last, lingering gaze. Their eyes locked, and Veronica's lips curved into a small, cruel smile. A smile that dripped with the unspoken words, "I won, and you lost everything." Then, just like that, she vanished. Clara crumbled, dissolving into racking sobs as the guards hauled her away to begin her sentence. 20 years. 20 years snatched from her. 20 years without her daughter. All because a billionaire wanted what Clara had and had the brute force to take it. That very evening, Veronica swept back into her sprawling mansion. In one of the upstairs guest rooms, Mary was perched on an enormous bed, looking utterly minuscule and forlorn. She was dressed in new clothes, eye-wateringly expensive ones that Veronica had personally selected for her. Her hair had been meticulously washed and brushed until it shone. She looked undeniably clean and presentable, but her eyes were swollen and red from crying her heart out. "Where's my mommy?" Mary asked yet again for what felt like the 100th time. Her voice was a tiny, broken whisper. Veronica settled into a chair positioned directly across from her, having carefully rehearsed what she intended to say. "Mary," Veronica began, her voice laced with forced gentleness. "Your mother is sick. She's gone to a place where doctors can help her get better." It was a bald-faced lie, of course. But Mary was just a tender 6 years old. She wouldn't be able to grasp the harsh, ugly truth. "When is she coming back?" Mary persisted, her voice cracking with unshed tears. "I don't know, sweetheart," Veronica responded, her tone measured and controlled. "It might be a very long time, but don't you fret. You're going to stay here with me. I'm your grandmother. Your father was my son. That makes us family, and I'm going to take care of you." Mary's face crumpled, and she started crying all over again, fresh tears streaming down her cheeks. "I want my mommy," she wailed, her small body shaking with the force of her sobs. I know," Veronica soothed, her voice devoid of genuine warmth. "But your mommy can't take care of you right now. She made some bad choices. She wasn't able to give you what you need." "She loves me," Mary sobbed, clinging to that one undeniable truth. "Love isn't always enough," Veronica retorted, her voice hard and unyielding. "You need food, clothes, a home, school, a future. Your mother couldn't give you those things, but I can." Mary burrowed her face into the plush pillow, her small body convulsing with uncontrollable sobs. Veronica watched her for a long moment, feeling that strange, unsettling twist in her chest again, a sensation that might have been guilt, but she quickly dismissed it. "This is all for the best," she silently reassured herself. "The child will eventually forget all about her mother. She'll grow up here surrounded by luxury, with opportunities Clara could never even dream of providing. She'll thank me for this someday." Veronica straightened up and walked toward the door. "Tomorrow we'll go shopping," she announced, her voice falsely bright. "I'll buy you toys, books, whatever your little heart desires. You'll see, Mary, life is going to be so much better now." She quietly closed the door behind her, leaving Mary alone in the cavernous, chillingly silent room. Out in the hallway, Veronica swiftly pulled out her cell phone and dialed her lawyer's number. "Richard, it's done," she stated flatly. "The custody papers were officially approved this afternoon. Mary is legally mine now." "Congratulations, Mrs. Hayes," Richard responded, his voice laced with professional satisfaction. Veronica glanced back at the closed door, the muffled sound of Mary's heartbroken cries seeping through the wood. "Yes," she murmured quietly. "Congratulations." But as she walked down the seemingly endless hallway toward her own master bedroom, Veronica felt anything but victorious. She felt utterly empty, a hollow ache that had been gnawing at her ever since Johnson's untimely death 3 years ago. Only now, instead of being haunted by a single ghost, she was burdened with two: her deceased son and the woman whose life she had so ruthlessly destroyed. But Veronica Hayes simply didn't believe in regret. She believed in winning, and she had undeniably won. The years in prison dragged on an agonizingly slow crawl. Clara's world shrank to an oppressive microcosm. A narrow cot, cold gray walls, and a tiny window positioned high up near the ceiling, offering only the faintest glimpse of the outside world. Every morning began with the same soul-crushing routine. Wake up, work in the dreary laundry room, choke down tasteless, institutional food, trudge back to her cramped cell, and try to find some semblance of sleep. But every single day, without fail, Clara's thoughts revolved around Mary. Is she scared? Does she cry for me at night? Does she even know that I didn't abandon her? Clara fought tooth and nail to stay strong, clinging to the hope of being reunited with her daughter. She folded clothes and sheets for endless hours, her hands moving on autopilot while her mind wandered far, far away, back to the memory of her daughter's radiant smile, the sound of her sweet little voice, the comforting way she used to snuggle into Clara's arms at night. In the evenings, Clara would sit on the edge of her cot and talk to Mary as if she were right there beside her. "I'm still here, baby," she would whisper fiercely, her voice thick with emotion. "Mommy didn't forget about you. I'll never forget about you." 20 years felt like an eternity, a seemingly insurmountable chasm of time. But Clara held on to hope with a desperate tenacity, as if it were the only thing keeping her alive. She wrote letters, countless letters, pouring her heart out onto the flimsy paper. She wrote about the boundless depth of her love for Mary, about her unwavering innocence, about her fervent promise to come back for her someday. She pleaded with whoever might read the letters to please, let Mary know that her mother was thinking of her every single moment of every single day. The letters were all addressed to Veronica's lavish mansion, but they never, ever reached Mary. Veronica made absolutely sure of that, burning every single one without a flicker of remorse. Back at the mansion, Mary was changing, slowly but irrevocably. The first year was undeniably the hardest. Mary cried every night, begging for her mommy. She refused to eat, her small body trembling with grief and fear. She suffered from terrifying nightmares, reliving the trauma of the shelter. She would wake up screaming, convinced she was still trapped in that awful place. But Veronica remained stubbornly resolute. She sat with Mary through every single one of her nightmares, offering a cold, clinical comfort. She made absolutely sure Mary had nourishing, warm meals, even if she refused to eat them. She enrolled her in an exclusive private school with the most highly regarded teachers money could buy. She showered her with books and toys and beautiful, expensive dresses. And most importantly, Veronica made sure she was always there. Not warm, not affectionate, but undeniably present, undeniably steady. Over time, almost imperceptibly, something began to shift within Mary. The desperate questions about her mother became less frequent, eventually fading away altogether. The haunting nightmares gradually subsided. She started excelling in school, displaying a sharp intellect and a thirst for knowledge. She began taking piano lessons, displaying a surprising aptitude for music. She even started making a few carefully vetted friends from other equally wealthy families. By the time Mary turned 12, the heartbroken little girl who had cried for her mommy every night had all but vanished. In her place was someone entirely new, someone impeccably polite, articulate, and remarkably controlled. Someone who looked and acted as if she belonged in the opulent surroundings of the mansion. Veronica watched this transformation unfold with a sense of grim satisfaction. See, I was right all along. The child simply needed structure, discipline, a proper life. But there was something crucial that Veronica completely failed to see. Mary never smiled anymore. Not really, not with any genuine warmth or joy. She was undoubtedly successful, yes. Unquestionably obedient, yes. But there was a palpable coldness emanating from her now. An invisible wall she had painstakingly constructed around her heart to protect herself from the unbearable pain of losing her mother. Mary learned not to love too deeply, not to trust too easily, not to need anyone, because needing someone only led to heartbreak. In a cruel twist of fate, she became exactly like Veronica. The years continued to roll on, an endless, monotonous cycle of days and nights. Mary graduated at the top of her class in high school, earning accolades and awards. She went on to attend a prestigious university, where she pursued a degree in business management, driven by an insatiable ambition. She was sharp, laser-focused, and formidably ambitious, quickly earning the respect, and sometimes even the fear, of her peers and professors. After graduation, she launched her own company, Hayes Marketing Solutions, a wildly successful firm that helped businesses craft compelling advertising campaigns. She lived in a sleek, modern apartment boasting floor-to-ceiling windows that offered panoramic views of the city skyline. She wore designer clothes that screamed wealth and status. She drove a silver sports car that purred like a pampered cat. Her life, from the outside, looked utterly perfect, a flawless picture of success and happiness. But Mary felt absolutely nothing. She simply went through the motions, a hollow automaton. Work, meetings, obligatory dinners with colleagues, perfunctory weekend visits to Veronica. But inside, there was nothing but an aching emptiness. Sometimes, late at night, Mary would stand by her window, gazing out at the twinkling city lights, and feel an overwhelming sense of displacement, as if she were supposed to be somewhere else, with someone else, living a completely different life. It was as if a crucial part of her was missing, a piece of the puzzle that she could never quite find. But she didn't know what it was. Or maybe she had simply forgotten. 20 long years after the devastating trial that had torn her life apart, Clara walked out of the prison gates, a free woman once more. She was 46 years old now, her youth stolen from her by the cruel hand of fate. Her hair was streaked with defiant strands of gray, a testament to the countless sleepless nights she had endured. Her face was etched with new lines, deep furrows that spoke of hardship and resilience. Her body was noticeably thinner, harder, forged in the crucible of prison life. But her eyes, those windows to her soul, still burned with the same fierce, unwavering love they always had. The prison authorities handed her a meager $40 and a one-way bus ticket, a pathetic attempt at recompense for the 2 decades they had stolen from her. Clara stood outside the forbidding prison gates, taking a deep, shaky breath of free air for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, and whispered a single, sacred word, Mary. She had absolutely no idea where her daughter was now. No idea if Mary even remembered her after all this time. But Clara knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was going to find her. She boarded the bus and rode into the city, her heart pounding with a mixture of hope and trepidation, and started looking for work. Any work. But no one, it seemed, was willing to take a chance on an ex-convict. Door after door slammed shut in her face, each rejection a fresh stab of pain. Finally, a small, struggling cleaning company reluctantly agreed to give her a trial run. The pay was abysmal, barely enough to afford a tiny, dilapidated room in a rundown building. But Clara didn't care. She was free, and she was determined to rebuild her shattered life, one painstaking step at a time. The cleaning company assigned Clara to various office buildings scattered throughout the city. She mopped floors, emptied overflowing trash cans, and scrubbed toilets until her hands were raw and bleeding. It was back-breaking, soul-crushing work. Her knees ached with every movement. Her back throbbed incessantly. But Clara didn't dare complain. She was simply grateful to be alive, to be out of prison, to have a chance, however small, at finding her daughter. One unremarkable morning, Clara was assigned to a gleaming glass tower in the heart of downtown, the corporate headquarters of a massive, multinational company. She arrived early, donned her drab uniform, and began her cleaning rounds. The lobby was vast and opulent, adorned with polished marble floors and eye-catching, exorbitantly priced artwork on the walls. Businesspeople in impeccably tailored suits strode past her without even deigning to glance in her direction. Clara didn't mind. She was accustomed to being invisible, a silent ghost in the background. She pushed her cleaning cart toward the elevators and began wiping down the mirrored surfaces. A few minutes later, a striking young woman walked purposefully into the lobby, radiating confidence and success. She was in her mid-20s, dressed in a sharply tailored gray suit that accentuated her slim figure, and carrying a sleek leather briefcase. Her dark hair was pulled back into a neat, sophisticated style. She walked with an assured stride, her high heels clicking authoritatively against the polished marble floor. Clara happened to glance up just as the woman passed by. For a fleeting moment, Clara experienced a strange, almost overwhelming sensation. A warm, magnetic pull in her chest, like a soft, gentle tug she couldn't quite explain. She found herself involuntarily watching as the young woman pressed the elevator button, that odd, inexplicable sensation still lingering. Why do I feel like I know her? But that didn't make any logical sense. Clara had been locked away in prison for 20 long years. She didn't know anyone in the city anymore. The young woman turned slightly, waiting for the elevator to arrive, and her gaze inadvertently met Clara's. And something undeniably happened. The young woman's typically composed expression shifted, ever so slightly. The hard, confident facade softened, just for a split second. She tilted her head almost imperceptibly, as if she were trying to recall a distant memory. Clara felt her heart begin to race, her pulse quickening. That strange warmth in her chest intensified, growing stronger with each passing second. The young woman offered a tentative smile, a small, uncertain gesture, and said, "Good morning." "Good morning," Clara whispered back, her voice barely audible. The elevator doors slid open with a soft whoosh. The young woman stepped inside, but before the doors closed completely, she glanced back at Clara one more time, that same puzzled, questioning expression etched on her face. Then she was gone, leaving Clara standing there, her hand still clutching the cleaning cloth, feeling profoundly shaken. What was that? She couldn't make sense of it. But something about that woman felt undeniably familiar, achingly important, like catching a fleeting glimpse of someone from a long-forgotten dream. Upstairs in her spacious office, Mary sat at her executive desk, staring blankly at her computer screen. But she wasn't actually seeing it. Her mind was completely preoccupied with the image of the cleaning woman in the lobby. Why did I feel that way? Mary had felt something undeniably powerful when their eyes had met. A sudden surge of warmth, a comforting feeling of familiarity she couldn't quite explain, like coming home after an incredibly long and arduous journey. But she had never, ever seen that woman before in her life. I'm just tired, Mary told herself firmly, trying to dismiss the unsettling feeling. I've been working way too much lately, pushing myself too hard. She forced herself to focus on her overflowing inbox, determined to put the strange encounter out of her mind. But all morning, she found herself unable to shake the feeling, that persistent sense of connection. And when lunchtime finally arrived, Mary found herself inexplicably drawn back down to the lobby, telling herself she simply needed to get some fresh air and stretch her legs. Clara was there, diligently wiping down the enormous glass doors, her movements slow and methodical. Mary subtly slowed her pace, carefully observing her. The woman worked quietly, meticulously, paying close attention to every detail. There was something undeniably gentle about her movements, something inherently kind in her weathered face. Clara looked up and saw Mary approaching again, that familiar feeling like an invisible current of electricity crackling in the air between them. "Hi again," Mary blurted out, surprising herself with her own boldness. Clara straightened up, visibly flustered and looking slightly nervous. "Hello, ma'am. You're new here, aren't you?" Mary asked, compelled to take a step closer. "Yes, ma'am. This is my first week," Clara responded softly, her gaze lowered. Mary nodded slowly, a thoughtful expression on her face. There was a palpable pause, a pregnant silence hanging in the air between them. "I'm Mary," she finally said, breaking the silence. Clara's breath caught in her throat. Her hands involuntarily tightened around the worn cleaning cloth. "Clara," she managed to say, her voice trembling slightly. "My name is Clara." They stood there, locked in each other's gaze, both acutely aware of that strange, powerful pull, that invisible thread connecting them. "It's nice to meet you, Clara," Mary said sincerely, and she truly meant it. She couldn't articulate why, but she felt inexplicably calmer, more at peace, just standing near this woman. "Nice to meet you, too," Clara whispered, her voice choked with emotion, tears threatening to spill down her weathered cheeks. Mary immediately noticed the raw emotion etched on Clara's face. "Are you okay?" she asked, concern lacing her voice. "Yes," Clara responded quickly, frantically wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand. "Sorry, you remind me of someone I knew a long time ago." Mary felt a strange ache resonate deep within her chest, a pang of something she couldn't quite identify. "You remind me of someone, too," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I don't know who." They stood in comfortable silence for another moment, each lost in their own thoughts, trying to unravel the mystery of their connection. Then Mary's phone buzzed insistently, a meeting reminder flashing across the screen. "I have to go," Mary said, her voice tinged with disappointment. "But I'll see you around, Clara." "Yes," Clara responded, her voice breaking slightly. "I'll be here." Mary turned and walked toward the elevators, but she glanced back twice, drawn by an invisible force. Clara watched her go, tears now streaming freely down her face. She didn't understand why, but being near Mary felt undeniably right, like finding a missing piece she had been searching for her entire life. And Mary, riding the elevator back up to her office, felt that same inexplicable pull, that nagging sense of familiarity, as if she had just encountered someone who mattered, someone important, someone she desperately needed. But neither of them understood why, not yet. Over the next few weeks, something truly beautiful and undeniably strange began to unfold between them. Mary started coming down to the lobby more and more often, seeking out Clara's company. At first, she rationalized it to herself, telling herself it was simply for quick coffee breaks or to get a breath of fresh air. But deep down, she knew the real reason. She was desperately looking for Clara, and Clara, equally drawn to Mary, began subtly adjusting her cleaning schedule, so that she would invariably be in the lobby when Mary arrived in the morning, eagerly anticipating their brief encounters. They started having small, seemingly insignificant conversations. "How was your weekend?" Mary would ask, her voice genuinely interested. "Quiet," Clara would respond, smiling softly. "How was yours?" "Busy. Always busy." The conversations were simple, unadorned, but they felt deeply meaningful, a lifeline in the vast ocean of their separate lives. Mary found herself confiding in Clara, telling her things she had never dared to share with anyone else. About feeling perpetually empty despite her outward success, about having fragmented, almost non-existent memories of her childhood, about the pervasive sense of loneliness that seemed to follow her everywhere she went. And Clara listened, truly listened, offering a silent, unwavering support that Mary found strangely comforting. Sometimes Mary would bring Clara a steaming cup of coffee, a small gesture of kindness that spoke volumes. Sometimes Clara would leave little encouraging notes discreetly placed on Mary's desk when she cleaned her office, offering words of wisdom and support. People at the company started taking notice of the unusual dynamic between the high-powered CEO and the humble cleaning lady. "Why are you so friendly with the cleaning lady?" one of Mary's skeptical colleagues inquired, her tone laced with thinly veiled judgment. Mary didn't know how to adequately explain it. "I don't know," she admitted honestly. "I just feel better when I talk to her, like she understands me, like she sees something in me that no one else does." What Mary didn't articulate was this. Being around Clara made her feel inexplicably safe, protected, in a way she hadn't felt since she was a very little girl. And Clara, for her part, was living in a bittersweet heaven, a torturous paradise. Every day she got to see Mary, to talk to her, to watch her smile, however fleetingly. But Mary had absolutely no idea who she truly was, no inkling of their shared history. And Clara, bound by years of separation and the crushing weight of her past, didn't know how to tell her, didn't know if she even should. 3 months passed in a blur of stolen moments and quiet conversations. Mary and Clara's unlikely friendship deepened, blossoming into something profound and unexpected. Clara learned that Mary had an insatiable craving for lemon tea but detested coffee with too much sugar, that she worked late most nights, fueled by an unwavering drive to succeed, that she dutifully visited her grandmother every other weekend but never seemed genuinely happy about it. Mary learned that Clara lived alone in a small, sparsely furnished apartment, that she had weathered countless hardships and faced unimaginable challenges, but never once succumbed to bitterness or despair, that she had an uncanny ability to make Mary feel calm, centered, and grounded, simply by being near. But neither woman knew the real connection that bound them together, the invisible thread that had been weaving its way through their lives for the past 20 years. Clara still didn't realize that the successful, driven businesswoman she cleaned for was, in fact, her long-lost daughter, the precious child she had been so cruelly separated from. 20 years had irrevocably transformed Mary, physically and emotionally. Mary had been just 6 years old when they were torn apart, a tender age when memories faded easily. Now she was 26, a completely different person, shaped by vastly different experiences. And Mary, tragically, had absolutely no conscious memory of her mother. The years spent under Veronica's cold, calculating influence had effectively erased almost everything from her early childhood, leaving behind only fragmented images and vague, unsettling feelings. All they knew with unwavering certainty was that being together felt right, like two halves of a whole finally reunited after a lifetime of searching. One particularly difficult afternoon, Mary was having an absolutely terrible day. A major project she had poured her heart and soul into had fallen apart at the last minute, crumbling before her eyes. She felt utterly exhausted, defeated, on the verge of complete burnout. She desperately sought refuge in the lobby, hoping to find Clara and perhaps glean some comfort from her presence. Clara was there, diligently cleaning the windows, her brow furrowed with concern as she took in Mary's visibly distressed state. "Bad day?" Clara asked gently, her voice laced with genuine empathy. Mary nodded slowly, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill down her cheeks. "Everything went wrong," she confessed, her voice trembling with exhaustion and frustration. I don't even know why I bother trying anymore. Clara carefully set down her cleaning supplies and settled onto one of the lobby benches. She patted the empty spot next to her, inviting Mary to join her. Mary hesitantly sat down and, without consciously thinking about it, leaned her head against Clara's shoulder, seeking solace in her quiet strength. Clara froze momentarily, surprised by the sudden intimacy, then slowly, tentatively, put her arm around Mary, offering a silent, comforting embrace. They sat like that for a long time, not speaking, simply existing in each other's presence. Mary felt something unexpectedly break open inside her. A long dormant dam of loneliness she had been holding back for years, struggling to contain the overwhelming pressure. "I feel so alone," Mary whispered, her voice barely audible. "I have everything I'm supposed to want, all the trappings of success, but I feel empty all the time, like something's missing, like I lost something incredibly important a long time ago, but I can't quite remember what it was." Clara's eyes welled up with tears, her heart aching with a mixture of sorrow and overwhelming love. She held Mary tighter, her embrace a silent promise of unwavering support. "You're not alone," Clara said softly, her voice thick with emotion. "Not anymore." Mary closed her eyes, savoring the comforting sensation of Clara's arm around her. "Why do I feel so safe with you?" she murmured, her voice filled with confusion and vulnerability. "I barely know you, but when I'm with you, I feel I don't know, like I'm home." Clara's heart was simultaneously breaking and healing, a profound paradox of pain and joy. "Maybe some people are just meant to find each other," Clara said quietly, her voice filled with a quiet wisdom. They sat together in comfortable silence until Mary felt strong enough to gather her strength and return to her office upstairs. One evening, Mary was working late in her office, the only light illuminating her desk. Most of the other employees had long since departed, leaving the building eerily quiet and still. Clara came in to empty the trash and clean, diligently performing her duties. "You're still here?" Clara asked, surprised to see Mary still working so late. Mary looked up from her computer, rubbing her tired, bloodshot eyes. "Big presentation tomorrow," she explained wearily. "I have to finish this." Clara immediately noticed that Mary hadn't eaten a single thing all evening. There was no food on her desk, just a collection of empty coffee cups, a testament to her caffeine-fueled work ethic. "Have you had dinner?" Clara asked, her brow furrowing with concern. Mary shook her head, her expression apologetic. "I'll eat something when I get home," she mumbled distractedly. Clara frowned, unconvinced. "Wait right here," she instructed firmly. She promptly left the office and returned 15 minutes later, carrying a simple sandwich and a bottle of water from the building's cafeteria downstairs. "Eat," Clara said, gently placing the food on Mary's cluttered desk. "You can't possibly work effectively if you don't take care of yourself." Mary looked at the unassuming sandwich, then up at Clara, and suddenly felt an overwhelming surge of emotion rise in her throat, choking her with its intensity. No one had ever taken care of her like this before, not in this simple, selfless way. Veronica had provided her with money, education, and endless opportunities, but never this kind of quiet, unassuming, heartfelt care. "Thank you," Mary said, her voice shaking slightly with emotion. Clara smiled warmly, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "You remind me of someone I knew," she confessed quietly. "Someone who used to forget to eat when she was worried or stressed." "Who?" Mary asked, her curiosity piqued. Clara's smile faded slightly, replaced by a wistful expression. "Someone I loved very much," she said softly. "Someone I lost." Mary wanted to press further, to delve deeper into Clara's past, but something in Clara's wistful expression stopped her, a silent plea for understanding. Instead, she picked up the sandwich and took a tentative bite, savoring the simple, unexpected act of kindness. Clara stayed and talked with her while she ate, asking about the daunting presentation, offering words of encouragement, and even managing to make her laugh with a silly story about a bird that had somehow flown into the lobby that morning, causing a brief but comical chaos. By the time Clara left, Mary felt both stronger and more profoundly confused than ever about why this seemingly ordinary woman meant so much to her, why her presence felt so inexplicably comforting. One Thursday evening, Veronica made an unannounced decision to visit Mary's office. She wanted to check on a crucial business deal Mary was currently working on, ensuring that everything was proceeding according to her meticulously laid plans. She didn't bother to call ahead, to give Mary any advance warning. She never did. She firmly believed she possessed the inherent right to show up whenever she pleased, without explanation or apology. Veronica confidently took the elevator to the 15th floor, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor as she strode down the hallway toward Mary's office. As she neared the office, she paused abruptly, peering through the large glass wall. She could clearly see Mary sitting at her desk, laughing and talking animatedly with someone. A cleaning woman. A cleaning woman with telltale streaks of gray hair and weary eyes. A cleaning woman Veronica recognized instantly, even after the passage of 20 long years. Clara. Veronica's blood instantly turned to ice, a chilling wave of disbelief washing over her. This is utterly impossible, she thought frantically. She was supposed to still be in prison. She was supposed to have disappeared, faded into obscurity. But there she was, undeniably alive, undeniably free, and sitting with Mary, casually talking to her as if they were old friends. Veronica's hands clenched into tight, trembling fists, her carefully constructed composure beginning to crumble. She whirled around and walked briskly back to the elevator, her mind racing, desperately trying to make sense of what she had just witnessed. How long has this been going on? Does Mary know who she is? Has Clara told her the truth? Veronica frantically pulled out her cell phone and dialed Mary's number, her fingers fumbling with the device. Inside the office, Mary's phone suddenly rang, shattering the comfortable silence. "Sorry," Mary said to Clara, offering an apologetic smile. "I should probably take this." She answered the call, her voice professional and composed. "Hello, grandmother." "Mary," Veronica said, her voice tight and carefully controlled, barely concealing the fury simmering beneath the surface. "I need you to do something for me." "What is it?" Mary asked, a sense of unease creeping into her tone. "There's a cleaning woman working in your building. Her name is Clara Mitchell. I want you to fire her." Mary's brow furrowed in confusion. "Fire her? Why?" "Because I said so," Veronica snapped, her patience wearing thin. "She's not fit to work in your company. Get rid of her. Immediately." Mary felt a rare surge of anger rise in her chest, a defiant spark she had long suppressed. "No." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. "What did you say?" Veronica asked, her voice laced with barely contained rage. "I said no," Mary repeated, her voice stronger now, filled with a newfound resolve. "Clara is a good person. She works hard. I'm not firing her just because you tell me to." "Mary," there was a long, pregnant pause. "Goodbye, grandmother," Mary said firmly, and hung up the phone, severing the connection. Clara watched Mary with wide, apprehensive eyes, her heart pounding in her chest. "Was that about me?" she asked softly, her voice barely a whisper. Mary set her phone down on the desk, her expression resolute. "Yes, but don't worry," she said, offering Clara a reassuring smile. "You're not going anywhere." Clara felt tears well up in her eyes, a mix of gratitude and trepidation. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. But both women felt a chilling premonition run down their spines, a cold certainty that Veronica Hayes didn't take rejection lightly, and she couldn't let this go. Veronica didn't sleep a wink that night. She sat alone in her dimly lit study, a half-empty glass of wine clutched in her trembling hand, staring intently at the flickering flames in the fireplace, her mind consumed by a maelstrom of rage and resentment. How dare Mary defy me? How dare she choose that insignificant cleaning woman over me, after everything I've done for her? For 20 long years, Veronica had meticulously controlled every aspect of Mary's life, shaping her into the person she was today. She had raised her, fed her, clothed her, paid for her expensive education, molded her into the successful, powerful woman she had become, and now Mary was throwing it all back in her face, siding with a cleaning woman she barely knew. Veronica's jaw tightened, her eyes hardening with cold, calculated fury. This is Clara's fault, she seethed inwardly. She's poisoning Mary against me, manipulating her with her lies and half-truths. She's trying to steal her back, to undo all the good I've done. Veronica knew she had to act swiftly, decisively, before Clara could poison Mary with the truth, before everything Veronica had painstakingly built came crashing down around her. She made a swift, cold-blooded decision. Tomorrow, she would go to Mary's office building. She would confront Clara herself, and she would make absolutely sure that Clara understood, in no uncertain terms, that some battles simply couldn't be won. The next evening, as the setting sun cast long shadows across the city skyline, Veronica arrived at the gleaming glass tower where Mary's office was located. She bypassed the main entrance and took the elevator directly to the underground parking garage beneath the building, a place she knew to be deserted and devoid of security cameras. She had discreetly gathered information about Clara's work schedule, learning that her shift ended promptly at 9 p.m. and that the cleaning staff always exited through the garage entrance, allowing them easy access to public transportation. Veronica waited patiently in the shadows near the exit, her expensive fur coat wrapped tightly around her, her eyes cold, alert, and focused. At precisely 9:15 p.m., Clara pushed through the heavy door leading from the building into the garage, visibly tired after a long and arduous night of work. She was hastily pulling on her worn, outdated jacket, preparing to walk to the nearby bus stop. "Hello, Clara," Veronica said, her voice cutting through the silence like a shard of ice, stepping out of the shadows to block her path. Clara jumped back in surprise, startled by the sudden intrusion. When she saw who it was, her face drained of all color, her eyes widening in a mixture of fear and revulsion. "You," Clara whispered, her voice barely audible, trembling with a mixture of dread and long-suppressed anger. "Yes, me." Veronica walked closer, her presence imposing and threatening. "We need to talk." Clara's hands involuntarily clenched into tight fists, her knuckles turning white with the force of her grip. "I have nothing to say to you," she retorted, her voice gaining strength despite her fear. "You destroyed my life. You stole my daughter. You sent me to prison for a crime I didn't commit. And I'd do it again." Veronica responded coldly, her voice devoid of remorse. That child needed a real home, a real future, not a squalid homeless shelter and a mother who couldn't even provide for her basic needs. "I loved her," Clara shouted, her voice echoing through the empty, cavernous garage. "That's more than you ever gave her." Veronica's eyes narrowed, her expression hardening. "You know nothing about her life." "I know more than you think," Clara countered, her voice filled with righteous indignation. "We've been talking for weeks now, and I can see it in her eyes. She's not happy. You turned her into a robot, a perfect little business machine, devoid of all genuine emotion. But you never gave her what she really needed." "And what is that?" Veronica asked mockingly, her lip curling into a contemptuous sneer. "Love," Clara questioned, her voice laced with a simple honesty. "Real love, not control or manipulation, just love." Veronica's response was a harsh, bitter laugh. "Love doesn't pay the bills, sweetheart. Love doesn't construct empires. Love doesn't guarantee success or provide security." "No," Clara conceded, her gaze unwavering. "But it gives you a reason to get up in the morning. Something you clearly haven't grasped." Veronica took a deliberate step closer, closing the distance until she was practically nose to nose with Clara. "Listen to me and listen good," she said, her voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "You will stay the hell away from Mary. You will quit that dead-end job of yours. You will pack your bags and leave this town. And if you even think about contacting her again, I will destroy you. Only this time it won't be a cushy 20 years in prison. It will be something much, much worse. Something you can't even imagine." Clara stood her ground, refusing to flinch or back down. "I'm not afraid of you anymore, Veronica." "Then you're a damn fool." Veronica spat, her voice dripping with venom. Maybe I am, Clara countered, her eyes hardening. But I'm also a mother. And a mother never stops fighting for her child. Never. Not even after 20 long years. Mary is my granddaughter, Veronica stated coldly. She belongs with me, not you. She doesn't belong to anyone, Clara retorted, her voice rising with righteous anger. She's a human being, not a possession, not a trophy to be displayed. When are you going to understand that simple fact? I understand perfectly, Veronica replied, her voice laced with disdain. I understand that you are nothing but a poor, pathetic excuse of a woman who lost everything because you were too weak. And I understand that if you try to poison Mary's mind with your lies, if you try to tell her who you really are, I will make damn sure she never believes a single word you say. I have lawyers, money, power. What do you have? Tears welled up in Clara's eyes, but her voice remained steady, unyielding. I have the truth, Veronica, and the truth always has a way of surfacing, eventually. Veronica opened her mouth to deliver another scathing retort, but she was cut off by the sound of approaching footsteps. Both women whirled around. Mary stood frozen in the garage entrance, her purse clutched tightly in her hand, her face a mask of shock. She had overheard every single word. The silence in the garage was thick and suffocating, a tangible weight pressing down on them. Mary stared at the two women, her mind struggling to make sense of the bombshell she'd just heard. You stole my daughter, she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. Sent me to prison for a crime I didn't commit. A mother never stops fighting for her child. Mary, Veronica interjected quickly, her voice suddenly softening, becoming almost pleading. This isn't what it looks like. Darling, you have to believe me. But Mary's gaze was fixed on Clara, on the older woman's tear-streaked face, on the desperate, painful love shining in her eyes. What did she mean? She asked, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and dawning comprehension. You stole her daughter. Veronica took a step forward, reaching out towards Mary. Mary, this woman is insane. She's been harassing our family for years. She's trying to. I asked her, Mary interrupted, her eyes still locked on Clara's. Not you. Clara's entire body was trembling, racked with a potent blend of fear and anticipation. This was the moment she had dreaded for 2 decades. The moment she would have to reveal the devastating truth to Mary and risk losing her all over again. But there was no turning back now. Mary, Clara whispered, her voice choked with emotion. I'm your mother. The words hung in the air like a clap of thunder, shattering the fragile facade of Mary's life. Mary recoiled, taking a shaky step backward, shaking her head in frantic denial. No, that's not possible. My mother died when I was little. Grandmother told me so. She lied, Clara said, tears streaming uncontrollably down her face. Your grandmother framed me for theft 20 years ago. She had me arrested and sent to prison. She took you away from me when you were just 6 years old, and I've been searching for you ever since. Mary turned to Veronica, her eyes pleading for reassurance. That's not true. Tell me that's not true. Please, grandmother, tell me she's lying. Veronica's face was as hard and impenetrable as stone. Mary, you need to listen to me. Is it true? Mary screamed, her voice cracking with raw emotion. The sound echoed through the cavernous garage. Veronica's silence was a deafening confirmation. Mary's legs felt weak and unsteady beneath her. She stumbled backward, reaching out to steady herself against a cold, concrete pillar. I had dreams, Mary whispered, her voice laced with a haunting sadness. Dreams of a woman who sang to me, who held me close, who called me baby. She looked at Clara with wide, desperate eyes, searching for a glimmer of hope. Was that you? Clara nodded, unable to speak, overcome with emotion. Tears streamed silently down her face. You're lying, Mary said, but her voice lacked conviction. This is some kind of trick, some kind of scam. I'm not lying, Clara insisted, her voice filled with anguish. She reached into her pocket with trembling hands and pulled out the faded, worn photograph, the one she had kept hidden and treasured all these years. The one of her, Johnson, and baby Mary. Look, please just look at the picture. Mary took the photograph. Her hands were shaking so violently she almost dropped it. But she focused and she saw them. Her father, Johnson, the man she had only ever seen in formal portraits displayed in Veronica's opulent mansion. And next to him was Clara, young and vibrant, holding a baby. A baby that looked exactly like Mary had looked in her own baby pictures. No, Mary whispered, her voice filled with disbelief and growing horror. No, 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 this can't be real. I loved you, Clara said, her voice breaking with unspeakable sorrow. I loved you more than anything in the world, and she took you from me. She ruthlessly sent me to prison for 20 years, condemning me to a living hell. She let you grow up believing I was dead, erased from your memory. But I never forgot you. Not for a single day. Not for a single moment. Mary turned to Veronica, her eyes blazing with fury and betrayal. How could you do this to me? To her? Because I was protecting you, darling. Veronica countered, her carefully constructed composure finally beginning to crack under the weight of the truth. She was homeless, Mary. She couldn't take care of you. You were living in shelters, eating from food banks, missing school. I gave you everything. Everything she never could. You gave me everything except the truth. Mary shouted, her voice filled with righteous indignation. You let me believe my mother was dead. You callously stole 20 years of our lives. I gave you a future. Veronica shot back, her voice rising in desperation. Look at what you've become. Successful, wealthy, respected. Would you have had any of that with her? Mary's eyes blazed with unadulterated anger. I would have had a mother, she declared, her voice ringing with defiance. I would have had love. Do you have any idea how many nights I cried myself to sleep, wishing I had a mom? Do you know how utterly lonely I was, growing up in that cold, sterile mansion with you? I did my best, Mary. Veronica protested weakly. Your best was a lie. Mary screamed, her voice cracking with emotion. My entire life has been a lie. She turned back to Clara, tears streaming down her face, her voice filled with a desperate hope. Is it really true? Are you really my mother? Clara nodded, her heart breaking and healing at the same time. Yes, baby. I'm your mother. I've always been your mother. Mary began to cry harder. Deep, wrenching sobs that came from 20 years of missing something she didn't even consciously know she'd lost. Clara opened her arms, and Mary, without thinking, without a moment's hesitation, ran into them. Mother and daughter held each other for the first time in 2 decades. Both of them crying, both of them shaking, both of them finally whole. Veronica watched them, her face pale, her hands trembling. After all her meticulous planning, all her lavish spending, all her ruthless wielding of power, she had lost. She had lost the one thing that truly mattered. Mary, Veronica said quietly, her voice barely audible. Please, let me explain. Don't, Mary said, her voice muffled against Clara's shoulder. Don't say another word to me. I never want to see you again. Mary, you can't mean that. Veronica cried out in desperation. I mean it, Mary said, pulling back and looking at Veronica with red, swollen eyes. Her gaze filled with a mixture of anger and profound disappointment. You're not my grandmother. You're a stranger. A cruel, heartless stranger who destroyed my family. I am your family, Mary, Veronica insisted, her voice laced with panic. No, Mary said firmly, her voice unwavering. She reached out and took Clara's hand, her grip strong and resolute. She's my mother and I choose her. Veronica felt something crack deep inside her chest, a profound sense of loss and despair. All these years, she had told herself she was doing the right thing, that taking Mary was justified, that Clara was somehow unworthy. But now, watching Mary look at Clara with such radiant, unconditional love, a love that Mary had never shown her, Veronica finally understood the devastating truth of what she had done. She had stolen love, and you can't buy love back. You can't force it. You can't own it. Please, Veronica whispered, her voice breaking with raw emotion, and for the first time in decades, there were tears in her eyes. Please, don't leave me alone. But Mary was already walking away, her arm wrapped protectively around Clara, supporting the mother she had finally found again. They walked towards the garage exit together and disappeared into the night. Veronica stood alone in the empty parking garage, surrounded by her expensive cars, cold concrete, and lengthening shadows. She had everything money could buy, and she had nothing at all. The next few weeks were anything but easy. Mary took a leave of absence from work. She desperately needed space to think, to process the enormity of what she had learned, to understand the true nature of her life. She moved out of Veronica's mansion that very night, taking only her clothes and a few cherished personal belongings. She rented a small, modest apartment across town. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers. Clara moved in with her. First, it felt incredibly strange. They were mother and daughter, bound by blood and history, but they were also strangers, separated by 20 years of lies and deception. 20 years was an eternity. They had to learn each other all over again, piece by painstaking piece. Mary had a seemingly endless stream of questions. What was I like as a baby? She asked one evening as they sat together on the couch, a comfortable silence settling between them. Clara smiled, her eyes distant with cherished memories. You were a happy baby, always smiling and cooing. You loved it when I sang to you. Your favorite song was You Are My Sunshine. You would drift off to sleep in my arms every night. Mary felt tears well up in her eyes, a mix of joy and profound sadness. I wish I could remember, she whispered. You were so little, Clara said gently, reaching out to stroke Mary's hair. Only 6 years old when they took you away. It's not your fault you don't remember. Tell me about my father, Mary said, her voice soft. About Johnson. What was he really like? Clara's smile grew sad, but also warm and loving. He was kind, gentle, and incredibly funny. He made me laugh every single day. He wasn't like the other rich people. He didn't care about money or status. He just wanted to be happy, to live a good life. And when you were born, Mary, he was the proudest father I had ever seen. He would hold you for hours, just staring at your little face, mesmerized by your perfection. He loved you so much. Did he know? Mary asked quietly, her voice laced with anxiety. Did he know what his mother was really like? He knew she was controlling, Clara said, her voice softening. That's why he was afraid to tell her about us, about our relationship. He was planning to introduce us to her properly, to make her understand how much we loved each other. But then, her voice broke, choked with grief. Then the accident happened and he was gone. And I was alone, pregnant with you, trying to survive in Veronica. She saw her chance, and she seized it. Mary reached out and took Clara's hand, her grip firm and supportive. I'm so sorry for everything you went through, Mom. For everything she did to you. It wasn't fair. It wasn't your fault, Clara said firmly, squeezing Mary's hand. None of it was your fault. You were just a child. But I grew up with her, Mary said, her voice filled with pain and regret. I blindly believed her lies. I never questioned her motives. I never looked for you. How could you ever forgive me? How could you have known? Clara asked, her eyes filled with compassion. You thought I was dead. And even if you'd known I was alive, how would you have found me? Veronica made damn sure we stayed separated, that there was no way for us to reconnect. Mary wiped her eyes, struggling to contain her emotions. I wasted so much time, Mom. 20 years we could have had together. 20 years that are now gone forever. We have time now, Clara said, squeezing her hand reassuringly. That's what matters. We have now and tomorrow and every day after that. We'll make up for lost time, I promise. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, just holding hands, just being together, basking in the warmth of their newfound connection. Mom, Mary said softly, tentatively testing the word on her tongue. Clara's breath caught in her throat. Yes, baby? I love you, Mary whispered, her voice filled with emotion. Clara pulled her daughter into a tight embrace, tears streaming down her face. "I love you too, Mary. I never stopped loving you. Not for one single second." They held each other and cried, tears of healing and catharsis, not pain and regret. Veronica, meanwhile, was slowly shrinking, fading away. Not physically. She still lived in her opulent mansion, still had her vast fortune, still owned her thriving businesses. But inside, in her soul, she was withering. Every day, she would sit alone in her dimly lit study, staring at old photographs of Johnson, of Mary as a young child, of the picture-perfect family she thought she had built. But it had all been built on a foundation of lies and deceit, and now it was crumbling around her. She tried calling Mary dozens of times, but Mary never answered. She tried sending heartfelt letters, pouring out her regrets and apologies, but they were returned unopened, their seals unbroken. She even tried showing up unannounced at Mary's modest apartment, but Mary steadfastly refused to let her in, her gaze unwavering and resolute. Finally, after weeks of fruitless attempts, Veronica stopped trying. She realized far too late that some things can't be forced no matter how much money you throw at them. Some wounds are too deep to heal. Some bridges are irrevocably burned. She had desperately wanted to own Mary, to control her destiny, to mold her into the perfect image of the daughter she never had. But in doing so, she had ultimately lost her completely. 6 months after the devastating truth came to light, Mary and Clara visited Johnson's grave together. It was a beautiful sunny Saturday morning. The cemetery was quiet and peaceful, a sanctuary of serenity. Birds sang sweetly in the trees, and a gentle breeze rustled through the leaves, making the grass sway rhythmically. They stood in front of the simple marble headstone, both holding bouquets of brightly colored flowers. "Hi, Dad," Mary said softly, her voice filled with reverence. "I finally know the truth now about you and Mom, about how much you truly loved us, about the sacrifices you made." Clara gently placed her flowers on the grave, her eyes filled with a mixture of love and sorrow. "I'm so sorry I couldn't protect our daughter, Johnson. I'm sorry for everything that happened, but I promise you, I'm taking care of her now. We're together again, finally." Mary reached out and took her mother's hand, her grip strong and reassuring. "And we're going to be okay, Dad. Both of us." They stood there for a long while, just remembering, just honoring the memory of the good man who had loved them both so deeply. Then, as they were turning to leave, Mary noticed someone standing far across the cemetery, half hidden behind a large, gnarled tree. It was Veronica. She was watching them from a distance, her face pale and drawn, her shoulders slumped in defeat. For a brief moment their eyes met. Mary felt a flash of anger, quickly followed by a wave of unexpected pity, and then something else, something more complex that she couldn't quite define. Forgiveness? Perhaps not yet, maybe not ever. But she understood, in that fleeting moment, that Veronica had lost everything that truly mattered, that she was utterly alone, trapped in a prison of her own making, that her years of relentless cruelty and manipulation had ultimately destroyed her own chance at happiness. And that, perhaps, was punishment enough. Mary turned away, breaking the connection, and walked with Clara towards the cemetery gates, towards the sunshine, towards their future, together. Veronica watched them go, tears silently rolling down her wrinkled cheeks. She had built a vast empire, amassed wealth beyond her wildest dreams, controlled and manipulated everyone around her, dominated every aspect of her life. But in the end, she had nothing, because you can't buy love. You can't steal it. You can't force it. Love is only real when it's given freely, wholeheartedly, without expectation. And Veronica had never learned that simple, fundamental lesson. Not until it was far, far too late. Narrator: I hope you enjoyed watching this story as much as I enjoyed creating it. Like, share, and comment on the lessons you've learned. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below.